Motherfucker. Literally the moment I start the stream, someone fucking outside my fucking door makes sound. Okay. Hey, everybody. So, yeah, thank you all for subscribing, obviously. I should have made this video a while ago, because now I'm almost at 2,400 subscribers. But, yeah, a lot of people have been having a lot of questions for me, and I figured that I could do a 2,000 subscriber Q&A stream. And, yeah, you guys seemed to like the idea when I proposed it in Discord, and a couple people had questions in Discord, and I figured I was originally going to do this as like an outro segment for a video, but no, I figured live chat interaction would be better. So I'll read off some of the questions people gave in Discord. Some of them I'll get to chat in just a second. Thirsty Fox asks, what were you before you became an anarcho-capitalist, quote-unquote capitalist? Well, I started off politics in 2013, I would say. And when I started off politics, I was a social democrat, actually, if you can believe that. Seems to be a pretty common thing that I hear among people who became ANCAPs there, former social democrats. Well, actually, around 2014, late 2014, I became disenfranchised with Suck Dems because, you know, how I really got into Suck Dems is because YouTube kept recommending Young Turks to me, and I sort of got into that because I'd become skeptical of religion, so I sort of got in on first wave skepticism early on. I'm pretty glad I didn't make any videos at the time because it would have been really cringy. But yeah, so from there, I became like IRA reactionary. That was even weirder. But then from there, I came back down to reality, to like right libertarian, quote unquote. Then, you know, shortly after the 2016 election, I went full ANCAP. So that's how that happened.
Rams Krill asks, how do you refund Fallout 76?
What was that? That's how that happened. How do you refund Fallout 76?
Here's I actually have an answer for this. What you do is you leave it alone, let it sit in your games library for a year, and then after a year has passed, let's be a little bit more generous and wait until 2020, when Bethesda has actually had time to patch the game and add content that actually makes it good. Then you play it, and then afterwards you need a refund. But it'll take a freaking year before it gets good.
Yeah, you remember last year everybody was talking about Star Wars Battlefront 2. Well, I recently bootlegged it, and I'm not even joking. It's actually not even that bad. It's,
Yay!
They patched all the problems with it, and they're actually adding new content to the online mode. They're like adding Clone Wars updates, like what everyone was asking for in the first place. I'm guessing that $3 billion loss in the first week sort of shook them. Like even for a corporatist entity, that is a pretty significant loss.
I never thought I'd see the day that EA actually listened to the consumers.
Yeah, because they had to.
That's the power of fucking well, it's not competition because they're corporatist, but just losing money. Really, it sends a strong message.
It must have exceeded the gains from their subsidies at last, and they were like, "Oh shit! Even with that, we're actually losing money. Fuck! Looks like we have to actually try."
Have you ever ironically or unironically posted a TikTok video? Atomic asks, and no, I haven't. I've never posted. I basically the only social. Got.
Is this house on fire?
I think so.
No, he was yelled
Okay,
at
let's
to turn off
let's
his
do the questions
Bluetooth.
themselves. Okay,
What?
how will AirCats take over America non-violently? I think we've been over this.
This is.
Crypto.
I feel like this is one of the
yeah.
this is one of the topics that we have to explain the most. So it kind of gives a lot of repetition, but I think the answer we've done a lot of content on it. I've done something on it. I've done some stuff on it, mentioned in a few videos. SO's done like 3 videos on that, so you can dig around his channel.
I've done more than 3 videos. I've mentioned it in multiple videos. I cannot even count how many times I've explained this. Counter economics will be the way that the state is abolished. Innovating decentralized and cryptography-based means of exchange, which the state by design can't regulate, and by design are not centralized from one point of distribution, so it's not even possible for there to be a monopoly in the first place.
Well, what's going to happen, at least from what I can tell, is that there's going to be hyperinflation at some point in the United States. Things are going to become so expensive that simply to buy food, water, and the basic necessities, people will be trading in cryptocurrency, not because they're anarchists, not of ideological reasons, but just for pure survival.
Well, that's my point, and that's the point that I've been making. That's the reason why it's hands down the best way to get rid of the state. It is not ideological. It's entirely driven by profit
Necessity.
gains, something that everyone can objectively realize as being beneficial to them. It's not ideological. It's not moral. It simply is beneficial for them. And whether they know it or whether they even agree with it or not, they are contributing to the abolition of the government.
Mm-hmm.
Armin Wood asks, how's Freedom Net coming along?
We're sort of on, I don't know if I'd say hiatus, but yeah, our main programmers are not really working on the project right now, and the only one which actually was contributing a bit, didn't he say he was like an LDS missionary and he was going to Peru? Yeah, so he's doing that, and I don't know when we'll hear from him again.
I happen to know, and it takes like 2 years. So, yeah, if you're a software programmer or a networking programmer, we definitely want to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but yeah, we're still working on it. Just sort of on a standstill right now.
Yeah, I hope we can get it to a point where it can go on my phone soon. That would be nice.
Well, ideally.
It'll take a while. I don't care.
Homan Rose asks, how would you feel if the CIA niggers actually considered you a threat and had their own department dedicated to you? I would feel as if I'm accomplishing my goal.
Yeah, it's a compliment at that point, isn't it?
I'd be flattered.
Yeah, I'd be bloody flattered.
I mean, I just saw the headline of a story of a guy who paid his car taxes with 3 wheelbarrows containing $3,000 worth of $3,000 worth of pennies, just to create such an inconvenience to the state. And I'm just thinking, like,
that's so amazing.
What was their response? Did they accept the pennies, or were they like,
don't even pay them 300,000? Don't even pay them at 300,000 pennies. Just fucking don't pay them. Find any way you can to get around them. They don't deserve it.
They don't, but I mean, if there's no way around it, and you have to pay to avoid going to jail, then there's no point in falling on your sword.
Just throw all the pennies in a river and tell them, hey, fish them
die
out.
on this hill?
Or, mix, if you want to really inconvenience them, mix in Canadian pennies.
Pumpkin Row asks, if I know networking programmers, do I send them to you or just link them to the FNet Discord? Yes. You can go ahead and do that.
Blink,
Asks, Esso, do you have your own Discord server? Yes, I do.
yeah.
I don't tend to give out the link publicly because of something known as Esso derangement syndrome, where people who don't like me really fucking despise me.
Yeah, we had some raids a while back.
Yeah, so I don't tend to give my link out publicly that often. However, I will give out a link in the stream's chat here because you asked.
The okay, I forgot what I was gonna say. Crod7435 asks, can fiat currency exist through a decentralized bank in an anarcho-capitalist society?
I think
No.
that not necessarily for I don't know, it could exist. I mean, I guess just depending on how people wanted to exchange on a personal level. But I really wouldn't see the point of banking to exist once you have basically a established and solid crypto market. At that point, the only purpose of banking would be essentially just for interest loans, and that's not really that stable or necessary since people trading with cryptocurrency and not having their money devalued, people would be able to afford more things with a lot less, especially considering that things would be innovating at a much greater rate and you'd have a much more competitive market.
I think that there's a simpler answer to that, and it's the same answer as, could you sell a bar of gold for a penny?
Yeah,
You could, just not for very long.
I like to be more specific.
Yeah.
I prefer to be more specific because one of my biggest problems in my early days in politics was I would hear things like socialism doesn't work because you always run out of other people's money. It's rhetoric. It doesn't mean anything. It's not explaining anything. It has as much explanatory power as when Cortez says, we want a living wage. So, no, I prefer to be as specific as possible because I think that if you are as specific as possible, regardless of how it comes off, it makes your position a lot stronger.
Okay,
Fair
so,
enough. So,
Derek M asks, are you planning on playing the new Super Smash Bros. Game, and which characters do you like?
I do not have a Wii U. Not a Wii U, I mean a Switch.
Fucking Wii U?
No, I don't have a Wii U. I basically skipped out on the last console generation entirely. I don't have a Switch. But the thing is, I might get a Switch just because.
Console gaming is a plague!
Yeah, if you do that again, I'm kicking you. But, yeah. Yeah, Smash Brothers Ultimate looks good enough that I may just buy a Switch because of it. The last Smash Brothers game that I played was Brawl, and my main character on Brawl was Lucas.
Okay, thank goodness you said that, because if you said Meta Knight, I would have probably slapped you through my monitor.
If you played as Meta Knight when I was Lucas, you'd get your fucking ass beat.
So, I will readily admit that PCs are obviously far superior to consoles, but I still do most of my gaming on consoles. Not sure why, I just prefer it.
There's a fun fact. There's already a Switch emulator in the works, and it's called Uzu, like YUZU.
oh, nice. That means I'll be able to play Metroid Prime
can
4
already
without.
play Breath of the Wild in 4K 60 frames per second. 60 frames per second. Although that's the Wii U version.
The Wii U version is only 30 frames, correct?
Yeah, but people have modified it to play 60.
Oh yeah.
So,
anyways, back to the questions.
Logan Looker asks my thoughts on Michael Moore. I think that he is a fat blowhard. So basically I have the same thoughts as anybody else. he basically throughout the early to mid 2000s, he was like the #1 purveyor of pseudoscience and misinformation, like next to Bill O'Reilly, basically.
Is he that documentarian with the baseball cap?
Yeah,
Yes.
the best thing that ever came out of Michael Moore is that scene in fucking Team America where he puts on the bomb belt and blows himself up in their fucking base. Hilarious. But yeah, I'm not really a big fan of Michael Moore, but I think I'll go to my server and look for another question, because the people ask me a lot of questions on here.
My thoughts on Michael Moore, I think he's a has-been. Not just because like his ideas were terrible, they were always terrible, but it's just like the kind of his ability to be a provocateur, to really make cutting-edge progressivist arguments is completely gone. He is utterly irrelevant.
Has been, wannabe, never was.
Where do you stand theologically? Zachary asks. I'm an igtheist, so essentially because he specifies not in terms of philosophy but on theology. So basically what that is I think that the entire debate of religion starts at a fundamentally flawed premise, which is that, for one thing, the concept of God or the spiritual plane of existence, it's too much of an abstraction to actually be tested scientifically. And if you're familiar with Karl Popper, you would know about the demarcation problem, which is that something which essentially explains everything becomes unscientific, because if it can explain everything to the point of contradicting itself, then then it's sort of vague and doesn't predict anything, so it's not actually a scientific argument. And I think that the problem of religion stems from those two problems. The main one being it doesn't actually describe anything, so therefore arguing theism or atheism, I mean, you're arguing over a fundamentally flawed premise. I reject both of them, so I'm an igtheist.
That makes a lot of sense. I shall adopt that and claim it as my own.
Now, if I were to describe my, my moral philosophy in the area, I think that because every single person or sapient being has essentially unlimited potential, their potential is limited to themselves, basically. I think that on this regard, the idea of God is sort of redundant, because everything that a God or a spiritual being can do, we can do. We can create life in labs. We did that recently. We created bacteria out of inert chemicals in a lab, and once we sequence RNA successfully, we'll be able to generate flesh purely out of inert chemicals. We can, you're starting to see like test tube babies and stuff. You're starting to see cloning. I mean, we can do anything that a so-called biblical character could do. So I think that on that regard, it's also sort of redundant.
Black Spruce replies, but you can't make a square circle. I would, as someone who's probably considered a theologian, I would say I don't think God could create a squared circle either.
You can't, because
but then he's not omnipotent.
It can't be.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's kind of funny that that Black Spruce mentions that argument, because he's.
I mean, like
I don't even know what the fuck Black Spruce is. He's always ranting about fucking Israel and the Catholics and the Jews, but yeah, God can't create a square circle either. So that refutes the idea that God is omnipotent.
I mean, I'm a theist and I recognize the flaw with that argument. Like I've seen that before.
Mhm.
Like
How do you
okay,
do something which is internally contradictory?
Yeah.
That's the problem with omnipotence.
I mean,
How,
if I were... Sorry.
Yeah, the problem with omnipotence: create a rock which is too heavy for you to lift.
Hmm.
If you
Like-
were omnipotent, you would be able to do that, but at the same time, if you created something that was too heavy for you to lift, that would mean that you're not omnipotent because you can't lift something.
Yeah, but the square circle thing, to play
before
devil's
we,
advocate, one could argue that it's not so much impossible as it is simply a contradiction in terms. It's a semantic issue rather than an actual thing. You know?
Before we start ranting, Harry Alexander asks, "Who's the better economist or economist? Rothbard versus Konkin? Favorite philosopher, Spooner versus
Konkin.
Tucker?"
Konkin, hands down, is the better economist. In fact, what Konkin is, his entire economic view was basically just fixing problems that Rothbard had proposed with his views. And really, I mean, a lot of people may be surprised. Like, I don't necessarily hate Rothbard, but I don't have a very positive view of him. For one, he didn't support jury nullification, which that is just like basic libertarianism. I don't know how the fuck. But, I mean, he also wasn't, he didn't believe that children possessed self-ownership. A lot of people strawman that to say, like, he believed in child slaves. No, he believed essentially that kids were like owned by their parents. It's really weird. I may make a video on it one day, but probably not, because that's just a shit show waiting to happen. Yeah. He also then there's his later years where he fucking went paleo libertarian, and that essentially did nothing but give left wing status to a bunch of quotes, to quote mine, and say, "Oh, look, ANCAPs believe that police should indiscriminately beat down on people." I mean, Rothbard really, Hoppe really fucked him up.
Yeah.
Never go full Hoppian.
Man,
Because I think, yeah, he went paleo libertarian after he met Hoppe in 1985. That's about the time when that shit started. So I don't think that's a coincidence.
I
But,
actually oh, sorry.
But yeah, Konkin actually debated Rothbard, and when he was debating with Rothbard, he exposed quite a few of the problems with Rothbard's thinking. The most prominent example was that Konkin back in the 80s was talking about cryptocurrency. He didn't describe it exactly as we know it today, but essentially a decentralized means of exchange could come into being and would innovate the state out of existence. So he was describing cryptocurrency just very generally. Understandably, because it didn't exist at the time. But yeah, Rothbard was not capable of seeing that. He basically just said, well, banks will always be a thing. He was very much a modernist in his way of thinking about the economy. And that's why I think that Konkin is the better economist, because he was able to see more things, and he was able to make more accurate arguments based on his ability to perceive more things. And that's the entire point of economics and the study of markets, is to be able to document your observations and to explain things. And if he was able to explain things Rothbard wasn't, that makes him better. But as for my favorite philosopher, Spooner versus Tucker, I like both of them, but Spooner he's my favorite philosopher of all time. I mean, I don't want to put Tucker down. He made a lot of good arguments. But yeah, Spooner, he's just the god tier philosopher. I don't think there will ever be someone who comes even close to him, holds a candle to his accomplishments and what he contributed. I mean, he essentially single-handedly proved that ethics, like he created natural law, the science of justice, and he essentially was one of the first people to scientifically demonstrate that you could have an entire legal system based entirely around self-evident axioms.
Well, don't sell yourself short, SO. Eventually, you might become someone else's Spooner.
No, not. I won't even hold the candle to him.
Don't know. Maybe you could become.
I think at the best that I'll ever be. I mean, for one thing, I don't really like talking about myself like that because I like to remain humble. But just speaking pragmatically, I think the best I'll ever be. I'll basically be like, I will never be like Spooner. I have a hard way of describing it, but yeah, it's hard to explain it.
I was actually about to ask a personal question. Question from me. The term capitalism, tacitly implies market anarchy. So isn't it redundant to call us anarcho-capitalists? Shouldn't we just go with the term capitalists?
No, you would go with the term anarchist. And as I explained in my video about the term capitalism, that term is not actually a specific term describing a specific set of principles. It's a political term which every philosophy has their own set of beliefs that they insert into it, and therefore it doesn't describe anything. So I think that libertarians should just call themselves anarchists. And yes, anarchy necessarily implies voluntarist markets. So I would agree with that, but not for the same reason.
The solution you propose in your video is that we call ourselves voluntarists, mostly because the term anarchists, as what's his name, Murray Rothbard also identified, is very much a loaded term, which immediately is going to bring into people's minds, well, and comms.
I didn't actually say that in my video.
Well, I just added those parts afterwards.
I said to identify our economic ideas, we should just describe ourselves as voluntarists, as to disassociate from the Keynesians and the other people who try and ascribe a set of principles to the term capitalism. I mean, with voluntarism, imagine a Marxist trying to explain that voluntarists believe that militaries should be over harvesting resources from other countries. Good luck with that one. Because unlike capitalism, voluntarism has, for centuries, had a pretty principled set of beliefs and descriptions for how it would work and how it isn't statist behind it. And yeah, I mean, I could see them trying to do that, but you know, they wouldn't get very far.
Let's see, questions.
I mean, if you want to call yourself an ANCAP, I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong in doing so. I don't really care, honestly. But you'd have more success if you described yourself as a voluntarist.
Okay,
that was the point to my video, and I think that a lot of people misunderstood that as like me attempting to start a sort of liberalist movement. No, I was simply talking about debate strategies.
State force individualism.
Oh, Sargon.
Soygon.
Yeah, I can't believe I used to actually respect that guy. Holy hell, man.
We've all made mistakes.
His only channel that I would even listen to is The Thinkery, but even then I recently unsubbed because I'm like, yeah, it's whatever. But Pumpkin Row asks, what are your detailed thoughts on egoists and primitivists and their philosophies?
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the empiricist elements. I sort of have a mixed opinion of egoism. I think on the ethical front, it's just reprehensible. Egoism on the ethical front is essentially no different than fascism or any of the other ultra statist ideologies. I mean, literally, the premise behind egoism is that the ethical standard the society should operate around is might makes right. And what is a perfect summary of statism other than might makes right? The state is able to do what it does because it coerces people. So I think on that front, it's completely fucked, and I think it's just shit tier philosophy. But I think that on the moral front, so how people look at the world, I think that they have a point. There's no such thing as an actual altruistic action. Everyone's ultimately motivated by self-interest. So I understand that. I think that that's it's a decent point. Not really a philosophy as much as it is sort of just a documented, observable fact within human psychology.
I think the best argument against... Crap, I'm getting an echo here. The best argument I've heard against... Who's echoing? So I think you're echoing.
Yeah, hold on.
I think the best argument against egoism has to be blue.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
we're not getting into that, but yeah. Blue is essentially the logical conclusion of egoism. He's
basically
what happens when you go egoist.
Basically, when you get the might makes right argument, anything and everything becomes justified in the name of self-interest. And of course, you can come up with all sorts of exaggerated examples. But yeah, you'd be right.
But that's the thing. When it comes to egoism, it's not really exaggerated examples. It's just sort of how they work. It's in my self-interest to blow up a fucking school. I mean, according to egoists, that's the right thing to do because it's in your self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if you wanted to do that.
It's like utilitarianism, but utilitarians at least, don't just say, well, it's in my self-interest. They attempt to justify it by moral fagging and making themselves seem altruistic.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of democratized interest rather than self-interest. But yeah, it's still the same problems where anything and everything can be justified at any point for any reason. As long as you speak the magic words, oh, it's for the greater good, or it's for my self-interest.
I just put in the chat, Jim Jesus screams in the distance, and then I see a dislike.
Hey, Jim, if you want to show up...
Wait, holy shit.
I love your laugh.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
703.
The thing with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is I don't really I really despise her arguments, but I don't really hate her as much as I find her hilarious. I have an entire section of my server just dedicated to people posting memes and making fun of her because it's fucking funny.
Oh, yeah.
I actually, you can remember before the midterms, I was just sort of semi-seriously throwing my support behind her because I've demonstrated objectively that it doesn't really matter who gets into office. The laws are going to be the same no matter what because both parties and all politicians have the exact same interests. Mm-hmm. So, no, I'm not even remotely scared of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. If she does something, then the other person who would have been elected would have done the exact same thing. But as far as I'm concerned, the only difference between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and any other politician is that she is fucking hilarious, and every time she opens her mouth, she says something that is just, I can't even believe that somebody with a functioning brain could say something like that.
I think she's the only. Sorry,
I mean, if you look at it from my point of view, it's a pretty easy choice.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, she's probably the only politician I have a opinion of that's greater than indifferent, if only for that reason. I hear her name on an article or something, I'm just like, oh, great, what has she said now? Because as you said yourself, it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, and yeah, speaking of her, I've got a new series coming out soon called Cortez Watch, and the first episode is going to be on her Green New Deal. It's because I actually would have made my first episode sooner, but the problem is that, like, I was recording stuff, and as I was recording stuff, she was just saying, like, so many dumb things. It was like on rapid fire. I just couldn't pick one.
To defeat global warming like we defeated the Nazis.
I could not.
That's actually what she said.
Oh my fucking god, dude. But yeah, I couldn't even pick which one. But yeah, the Green New Deal and her arguments in support of it, as well as people who support her arguing for it. This has to be the one.
George,
I mean, I'm goddamn serious. You can't even make this shit up. The Huffington Post article, which she shared on Twitter, advertising. Look, an economist said that my plan would work. I click on the article, like second paragraph in, they write, well, spending doesn't matter. We've just been printing money for like the last 100 years, and that's been how the state funds itself. And I'm like, okay. So literally their answer is default because you're going to go into such an insane amount of debt. I mean, that's fine by me. I mean, if you're a fan of accelerationism and you want the state to be gone that much faster, then Cortez really is the candidate for you.
It reminds me of when that socialist, I think he was somewhere in Africa, I forget who he was, some guy, I think he was leading one of the countries, he was like, we'll print money until everyone is rich.
Yeah, hold on, I'm going to be back.
Just hilarious.
Oh, you see, we just don't have enough inflation. Which is actually hilarious, because if they want to make people rich, they would deflate the currency to the point of a dollar being able to buy a house.
I think he just didn't understand that making more of the money would affect the value of the money that already existed and the money that began to exist, because the total value would remain the same, but it would
just
be more.
Print more money. That's seriously their answer.
Yeah.
Also, George Mason asked, who is Filthy? Oh, hi. I have a YouTube channel too. Check that out. And let's see here. Is there another question? Daniel Westfall asks, thoughts on Ayn Rand and objectivism?
Absolute cancer. I don't know why many libertarians identify with objectivism, because, I mean, Ayn Rand really made it clear she does not like libertarians. She said that libertarians were worse than communists, but yeah, I mean, if you actually look at her philosophy, it's essentially just egoism, but statist, like openly statist. So, then you take that into consideration. It's really funny that like mainstream media status shills always use Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand as an example of libertarian philosophy, because she's not even a libertarian. So, you know, you see how they pick out straw mans and deconstruct straw man arguments. You just gotta love how libertarianism and anarchy is like so sound that they can't even actually pick an anarchist to attack when they're doing that, or a libertarian. the libertarian that they pick is not even a libertarian.
Yeah. I only have a rough idea of her ideology, and even I can tell it's, stupid. I don't even really understand it, but it just seems
I mean, it sounds
strange.
great. Sorry. It sounds great if you're, say, a conservative. But outside of, if you're actually concerned about, ethics or free markets, then yeah, any philosophy that's going to continue to embrace the cult of the omnipotent state is generally going to be a problem. Play my Bioshock. It debunks libertarian. God, that game was so repetitive.
Somebody, Black Spruce asks, the Jews, I think the JQ, it falls over the first hurdle, which is the premise that because Jewish people are Jewish, that somehow means that they're conspiring with one another. No. There are people who don't even know that they do have Jewish blood, and they are not actually practicing Judaism. And if the JQ was correct, then it would be like, so people who are ethnically Jewish and don't even know it, they just know the Talmud in their blood. They know every word of it in their blood.
Yeah, I can confirm this. I am ethnically Jewish. My mother has a Jewish grandmother as well on her mother's side, so I am in fact ethnically Jewish, and I can confirm that through genetic memory, I have all knowledge of the Talmud, and I've worked very hard my entire life to reject it. I mean, that's centuries, like hundreds of generations of programming that you just have to fight.
Yeah.
But
so about the JQ, it's a bunch of collectivist bullshit. It makes for some hilarious memes, but in reality, it's just really stupid.
What does the Q stand for?
Jewish question.
Oh, right.
Crod7435 asks, do you think World War III will happen?
Do I think World War III will happen? Well, I mean, the states got to survive a few more years for that to happen, and at the rate that we're going, I don't think it will. I mean,
Yay.
Bitcoin's about to overtake MasterCard in daily transactions. I think they already did because that story came out like a week ago. So,
my opinion is that in order to continue to survive, the state is going to initiate World War III. It will not be anywhere near the scope of World War II or World War I, but they will do it nonetheless with a large coalition of allies and a large coalition of enemies. Then they'll do this largely just to try to implement some form of war Keynesianism, to try to keep the gravy train going for just a few more months. That's literally all it's going to be. Of course, by this time, like, their death is inevitable. Their currency will probably be debased so badly that
by that time, most people probably won't even be trading with U.S. dollars in the regulated market. So, I mean, where will they be getting their funding from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the problem with that. I just don't see that. I don't see any efforts that the state takes after a stable crypto market is mainstreamed, because by that point, people just simply won't, at that point, it actually will be voluntary whether or not they give their money to the state, and who the fuck would do that?
Mhm.
I mean, it really would be, and I think that simply because of that, they just wouldn't have the money that would be necessary to fund their services, so they would simply dissolve because they have nothing.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's a hot question that's been responded to a lot in the comments, but I think it'd be fun for us to talk about nonetheless. Anarchy Cat asks Esso, what stops the state from banning Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies?
The
Because cryptocurrencies, by design, they can't be regulated. It's for the same reason that they can't be tracked. The blockchain system is an autonomous network which operates off of a series of receiver nodes being sent to essentially every wallet within the network, and it's encrypted through cryptography. I mean, I'm not really a big IT guy, so I have a difficult time explaining this technically.
If I may.
Hold on, but
Okay.
no. I mean, multiple governments have already outlawed it technically, and since then, their crypto markets have, gained exponentially in size. So, I mean, we have, by design, it can't be outlawed, and we have proof that it can't be outlawed because states have tried multiple times already. Colombia, China, Russia, it doesn't work. You simply cannot outlaw it.
George Mason asks, "Are you a furry?"
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, the Bitcoin thing. Before I forget, not sure if anyone actually said this, but as I understand it, it's unenforced. Any laws on it are unenforceable because you can't tell who's using it or when or to what quantity. So,
Ryan.
Well, yeah, that's what I said, but I attempted to explain it more technically. So,
sorry.
All right. So Ryan Young asks, "Do large corporations have enough resources to bully out of a free market?"
Yeah, the problem with that is, how do you bully out of a free market without a state? You need a state to do that.
I think I'm having a little trouble trying to understand the question, but I think what he's asking is, what if big companies try to bully smaller companies out of business?
Yeah, and that's not going to happen in a free market. You need a state to coerce companies out of the market.
Mm-hmm. Like I've explained how mathematically that does not work, simply because their larger market share means that in order to, say, price gouge their opponents out of business, they would have to take on a significantly larger loss than their competition.
Yeah, I've explained that too. I explained that recently in one of my responses to Knowledge Hub.
Yeah. George Mason asks, "How do I avoid paying taxes when using crypto?"
Don't turn it back into
Don't
fiat.
interact with the state. It's really that simple.
Pretty much.
They can't prove how much you have. They don't know what your wallet is. All you need to do is avoid them.
Mm-hmm. Legally, we can't tell you to do this, but if you were to, that would be the advice we would give.
Also, don't turn it back into fiat, because then it is taxable. And I think transaction that does that is taxable as well.
Pretty much. Now, Crod7435 asks, "What's your thoughts on the France riots?"
What are my thoughts about the France riots?
Yes.
Well, I think that's just people, understandably being angry about, not being able to live because of these new taxes that are being implemented. They're not rioting out of principle, but I mean, I understand, if they were ANCAPs, they wouldn't even be rioting. They would go straight to their local black markets and trade around the state for whatever they wanted. They'd be fueling their cars with alcohol, like moonshine or something.
Anarchy Cat asks, "In Ancapistan, may I legally own a Mikagulag?"
No, you can't coerce people into work camps. So,
I mean, you can own a piece of property, build a fence around it, and call it McGulag, but the moment you start imprisoning people is the moment it stops being legitimate.
Yeah.
Unless you're a voluntary prisoner.
Yeah. What if it's a voluntary gulag? That was going to be my question too.
If that's what you're into, I'm not going to judge you. I don't judge your lifestyle.
Oh no, I judge very harshly. won't do anything to stop it except offer advice and tell you how stupid you are.
Where,
Sleepy-
okay, I
Sleepy
was gonna say-
Projections asks, "Can I own the moon?"
Yes.
Maybe.
I
You
mean,
can own property on the moon.
like own the entire moon itself. In theory, yes, but I imagine that would be incredibly difficult and not very cost effective.
Yeah, well, for one thing, you'd have all these other people buying property on the moon at the same time as you, so you wouldn't really be able to own the moon. Sort of, the same reason you can't just own the entire world. But also, you'd have to be able to meaningfully demonstrate ownership of it. So, of the entire moon, and good luck with that.
Cosmic Fun asks, "Can I own ESO?"
No.
Yeah, no.
Patno says asks, where does the
Can I own
proof
you?
of self-ownership axiom come from, which is foundational to the NAP?
Okay, I'm sorry. What was that? People were talking, and I
Sorry.
can't find that comment that you're referring to.
It's further up. It says, where does the proof of the self-ownership axiom come from, which is foundational to the NAP?
Well, first you have to define proof, but if you're talking about it from an empiricist perspective, then no, the proof comes from the fact that it's an objective line of reasoning, that logic is objective, and therefore you can demonstrate that ethics are objective, and from there you can demonstrate that certain lines of reasoning are objective and some aren't.
Well, the way I see it, the ability to ask that question is demonstrative of self-ownership. Since you wouldn't be able to physically ask that question, move your hands over a keyboard, and make certain keystrokes if you didn't have dominion over your physical body.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So naturally, like you can't.
I mean, you can't deny the objectivity of logic, because to merely argue that logic is subjective, you have to believe in an objective line of reasoning, which means you believe logic is objective. So,
And arguments against self-ownership are self-destructive, because in order to make the argument against self-ownership, you have to use your own self-ownership. It's like saying the English language is meaningless.
In English.
In English, it's a self-destructing argument, because you're relying on the objective meaning of the words you're conveying to convey that words have no meaning.
But have you considered
Well, actually, no. That's a really good point. I mean, I have to really think about that. Wait a minute, didn't Dr. say something about that?
I mean,
No, that wasn't
ownership, comes from the fact that you simply own your actions. I mean, this really shouldn't even really be an argument, honestly. If you don't own yourself, then that would mean someone else would have to own you, because you can't have a situation where no one owns you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any agency at all. And if somebody else owned you, then they would have to explain how they got in that position where they were able to demonstrate ownership over an agent, a self-acting agent with sapience, and you can't do that. There's no explanatory power behind that.
Black Spruce asks, will the artificially generated furries be slaves or self-owning individuals?
It depends on whether or not they have sapience.
If they have sapience, then they have self-ownership.
If they don't have sapience, then they can't demonstrate self-ownership.
Wouldn't you be able to say that, like, in the abortion debate, though?
Because babies biologically are human, and therefore they possess sapience.
Like they're not. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, to argue that they don't have sapience because they're in the womb is like arguing that somebody doesn't have sapience because they're asleep. It's a really bizarre argument.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Anarchy Cat asks, how will the ANCAP community deal with the Pinochet tard problem? I will never know.
We don't have a state.
Well-known member asks, what are your hobbies outside of YouTube and anarchism? Well, I am a musician. I play guitar, bass, and I know how to use a turntable. I'm a CD collector. I own about 1,250 to 1,300 CDs. And I occasionally play games on my computer. I also study philosophy.
Do you think you could teach me guitar? Once we're like,
It's not something you pick up really quickly, but sure.
well, I'm pretty good with music, and I have played a bit of guitar in the past. I don't know.
He's pretty good at F-Zero GX.
Yeah, I sent footage one time because you guys were talking about F-Zero GX, and yeah, my footage was just I picked up the game and I beat the chapter 9 on very hard, like casually playing it on full acceleration. And for those of you who don't know, that is a hard as fuck racing game, and the story mode is like Kaizo hard.
Like chapter 5 on Very Hard. You gave us footage of you actually finishing that, right? Which is like, you might as well just beat Dark Souls 2 with the ladle. That's how hard it is.
Is Mission 5 the one where it's like speed, where like you have to remain above
Yeah,
a certain
no,
speed, or is it
that's
tunnel?
the 6th one. The 5th one is where all the walls are closing in and the buildings.
Oh,
are
that.
going up.
Oh no! I wasn't thinking about that one. I was thinking about the Grand Prix.
So that's 7.
It probably is 7 then. Yeah.
Dude, 7.
You defeated that one on Very Hard. And I'm just like thinking that you're either a Russian bot, or you are an absolute god at F-Zero GX. Because that mission is impossible. To put this in perspective, I was able to complete Mission 5 on Very Hard. Took me several tries, but I was able to do it. I could never I couldn't even beat it on hard, let alone Very Hard. Mission 7. It's impossible.
Oh, I beat the game on Very Hard.
I'm not. Somebody asks what my band name is. I'm not in a band. I was back in like 2015, 2014. I was in like a high school project. But no, I'm not currently.
Ryan Young asks, what style of music do you play?
I started off. I got into music through like alternative metal, but a band that I heard about around like 2012, 2013, Static X. I found them, and they're my favorite band ever, basically. And because of that, I got into like industrial metal. And like I mentioned earlier, I know how to play turntables. Well, I mean, Static X basically inspired me to learn the more industrial sides of metal. Like learn about programming and sampling.
Interesting. Now, Cold Jewel Tad asks, why couldn't you be unowned?
Well, we sort of already explained that.
Yeah, we kind of did.
Because the mere fact that you're typing something shows that you have agency. The mere fact that you're doing anything shows that you have agency.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can't be unowned. That's pretty self-evident.
Like, even if you could, like, you would have to... There would have to be demonstration that you're owned to someone else, because the opposite of having self-ownership is that you're a slave, but then who are you a slave to, and to what degree?
And even then, it's like if nobody owned anyone and they didn't even own themselves, then that means that anyone is free to do anything to anyone, which of course includes murder. In which case, well, you know where that goes. So a new question. This is actually 3 questions, but I think it'd be funnier to ask them all in order. SO, how old are you? SO, what's your height? SO, what's your social security number?
Well, I'm not answering the last one. I'm not answering the I guess I'll answer the first and second one. I'm 20 and I'm 6'1".
Damn, you're actually younger than me.
You're a tall boy.
He's like 1 inch taller than me.
So Ryan Young asks, "What about cattle?" I think that's questions asked in the context of do cattle own themselves?
No, because animals don't possess self-ownership. They don't have sapience. That's what separates a being with agency from a being which possesses self-ownership is the sapience, the ability to actually perceive the world in more than just an instinctive perspective.
Anarchy Cat asks for your thoughts on the bread Santa and his bread book and the Book of Mutual Aid.
Absolute shit tier philosopher.
For those
yeah, like I've mentioned, I plan on doing a video on Kropotkin. I mean, not just as an anarchist philosopher or an economic philosopher. I mean, this is the guy who claims to be a biologist and then argues that humans and ants are biologically similar to the point where we would evolve into some mutual aid society because humans and ants are so similar. Like that was his basis for arguing that. I'm not even making that shit up. I've mentioned that as a disagreement with some ANCOMs, and they say, "Oh, that's not what he said." But no, third chapter in mutual. It's the second chapter in mutual aid. He tries to argue that competition is injurious to the species, which I mean that is ridiculous. But I think it was like the third chapter, the first paragraph of the third chapter of mutual aid. He attempts to argue that because humans and ants share the same type of mind, that without a state, they would just magically become communist. I mean, the dude was an absolute fucktard, seriously.
So, Ephraim, sorry.
Like, I think he's like the very bottom tier of self-proclaimed anarchist philosophy. I think right next to Emma Goldman. And for the record, I'd where I'd put Rothbard, because I'm sure that's on everybody's mind. I'd put him like just above Proudhon. Like he's like mid tier, I'd say. And I've already explained what God tier is, like Conkin, Spooner, Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. I was about to say, Ephraim Josine asks, "Why have you never responded to me? Did you forget about me after our debate? Do you think a real libertarian party could exist?"
No, a libertarian party couldn't exist because libertarian parties believe in the legitimacy of the state. They believe in using coercion against people. So, no, I don't think a real libertarian party could exist.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Young asks, "How is sapience determined? Is there no way to measure sapience in such a way that would allow for slavery of some humans?"
Oh, sure, you could it's pretty easy to determine sapience. I'm sure you've heard of the Turing test. I'm looking this up right now because basically there are specific questions that you can ask a creature which has sentience, but if it had sapience, it wouldn't be able to process these, like various logical paradoxes. Like that's probably the best example. Like the scientist asks, any scientist who claims that God isn't real is making a false statement. That's a logical paradox, and if you ask that to a creature without sapience, they wouldn't be able to understand that.
Vladimir, never mind.
Here's a it's not really a question, but it's just a comment. I think it's interesting and probably want to talk about. George Mason said, "I heard that the Nazis privatized their economy."
Yeah, no, they didn't. That's a common historically revisionist myth that gets spread around in Marxist circles. If you actually look at how they structured their economy, it's very similar to how Venezuela or the Soviet Union did, in the sense that what they did is they established worker councils for each district within the country, and Nazi Germany managed these worker councils with a section of their government known as the German Labor Front, which was proposed as a worker union that workers would be able to operate the means of production from within. And yeah, no, they basically controlled their entire industry from these worker councils. But yeah, because they weren't directly state owned, so that's a big problem with Marxist argumentation. Is it falls back on a sort of presupposition apologetics in a very similar way to creationism, where if because they simply define their ideas as we believe the means of production should be seized. They don't explain how they're going to get there. Well, Marx actually did, but Marxists don't, or if they do, they propose vastly contradicting ideas. But because they don't explain what that is or how they get there, when you see governments actually attempting to implement this idea and inevitably failing because it won't work, then they could say, oh, well, that's not actually socialism. Or in the case of this, where it's state-installed worker councils managing businesses, they can say, oh, well, you see, the businesses were they weren't directly owned by the state, so that means that they were privatized, even though they weren't.
Well, you can see this right now in our modern corporatist, semi-fascist economy, where every time where the government regulates an industry to death, and then when it collapses and brings down the rest of the economy with it, they just go, "Oh, we just had too much of a free market. If we just had more regulations, even though it's what regulations, that is economic restrictions, that killed it in the first place."
Yeah, oh, here it is. Gecko versus the State asks, how many of you are furries? I'm pretty sure all of us are.
Hello.
Except possibly Hoplu.
Yeah,
I like anthros, but I will never consider myself a furry.
I'm serious. I actually, am not a furry in the sort of fursuit style. I just sort of, I had this astronaut character and I wanted to do something to set him apart from everyone else. So I made him a fox and everyone started calling me a furry. And I was just like, okay, I'll go along with that. I don't really care.
Well, I mean, you're a fan of the art, right?
Oh, yeah, I do like anthros. Yeah, I like anthros. That's there's no question. But I mean, in my mind, a furry is somebody who goes to the conventions and would create a fursuit. And no, I wouldn't do any of that. I wouldn't associate with them.
Well, you don't have to be a fursuiter. I never go much further than ears and a tail. But that's partly because it's very expensive.
Ryan Young asked, how many of you lost your virginity?
Dead silence.
Dead silence.
There's your answer.
That's just a very fucking awkward question. But no, I mean, I have. I can't speak for everybody else. But
does your hand count?
No.
No.
We'll get to you eventually.
Ephraim Josine asks, does being a furry violate the nap?
No.
No, but their STD problem does.
Hoo-hoo. Burn.
ANCAP propaganda. If you wanted to, you could have a furry in a forest, in a private forest, and hunt them down. I mean, you could technically do that.
Just make sure that the furry consents.
I mean, hell, if you wanted to, you could just throw some puppies into a river and use them as target practice.
I'm sure.
So just to do that, no.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't.
That's
I mean,
so
sure you
mean.
can. I wouldn't say that that's justified. But I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be too hard to find a furry who would consent to being hunted down in a forest, I'd imagine.
Maybe as a kind of role play thing. Just
So long as
make
he's
sure
trying
there's
to
safe
support him
words.
afterwards.
Mm.
Where? Damn, I just said okay. Oh shit, never mind. I lost it.
There's two people asking the same question. Gecko versus the State and Logan Looker. Thoughts on Bad Mouse Productions?
There it was. Yeah. I was gonna say that.
My thoughts on the dude. I obviously I have a negative opinion of the guy. I mean, not of him personally, but the content he puts out. I mean, he just sort of. I think he goes just as a full-blown Marxist, but then, not even a year ago he was an ANCOM, and before that, apparently there was a short period of time where he was an ANCAP. I mean, obviously he never understood it if he can become a Marxist, but yeah.
If you go from that, I
Bad
wouldn't
Mouse
say-
confuses me. As an entity, I don't really know what to make of him other than just complete shit to your philosophy.
Didn't he?
Mm.
If I recall correctly, and I've only heard this, I don't know much about it personally, but he used to be an ANCAP. Then he became a girlfriend with, or then his girlfriend was I believe it was Mexi, and it was an ANCOM YouTuber, and he just
Yeah, I've heard conflicting stories about that, so I don't know about that.
ANCAP Hoplite asks, "What do you think of anarcho-mutualism?"
Well, anarcho-mutualism is sort of redundant because mutualism in its proposition would be a stateless philosophy. Not a big fan because it requires coercion. You wouldn't be allowed to own private property. You'd only be allowed to occupy. So essentially, mutualism is the straw man version of ANCAPism that people like Sargon propose.
The basic idea is that you drive to the grocery store, park your car in the parking lot, go and buy groceries, you come back out, and someone stole your car, but it's not stealing because you weren't in the car at the time.
Motherfucker, I created that meme.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I actually did. Just for the record, that mutualist ball meme that says when you're at the grocery store and your unoccupied car gets stolen in the parking lot, that I actually created that.
Oh, wonderful.
Logan Looker keeps asking that, so we might as well just bring it up. Why are you dressed as Negan on Discord?
Because I like Negan. I think enough said.
I'm not sure who that is, but I like the outfit.
He's
Yeah.
Some guy in Walking Dead, right?
yeah.
Which version?
Dude,
Comic, TV show, or
I
video
like
games?
villain characters. Villain characters are awesome.
Mm.
I secretly root for all of them.
Given your
My
disposition,
favorite
that doesn't
characters
surprise
are the
me.
characters that share my alignment of which is chaotic neutral.
I
Chaotic
root
neutral-
for some villains. It depends on how strong their motivations are versus the motivations of the protagonists, Because sometimes the protagonists just have the basic motivation of we're the good guys, and the villains are actually interesting, and I just end up
Especially-
wanting the villains to win.
Especially in the case of The Walking Dead, because Rick is a fucking punk. I hate that guy.
Mm.
Since fucking, everything that's gone wrong for the last 4 seasons has gone wrong because Rick's fucked up and has done something really stupid. I mean, I've just wanted Negan to bash his fucking skull in for like the last 2 seasons. I'm just getting sick of shit.
Oh, and by the way, Hoplu, chaotic neutral is the worst alignment.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because neutral good is the best.
I tend to play chaotic good.
I don't know that whole thing. Thanks, Simon, on it. I like how the Gecko versus the Say says anime is lazy. Almost all of them use the same art style and plot devices. But then you look at cartoons today like The Amazing World of Gumball, Steven Universe, and all that Cal art style that they keep using.
Gumball ain't comparable to Steven Universe.
Dude,
No.
fuck mainstream animation just as a whole.
Yeah.
At this point, the only good animation you're gonna get is online because mainstream animation is just that Cal arts, not even actually animated by the people who create the show. They fucking
Like-
offshore it to Korean animators who work in sweatshops.
Maybe it's just nostalgia for me, but I would say that there was a silver age, but it ended when the Tumblrites that were brought in basically took over. And there's the occasional flicker of good cartoons left, but are coming to an end.
I mean, I wouldn't remember that because I stopped watching mainstream cartoons.
Yeah,
when
I'm
I was,
fucking sick
around
of it.
like 2009. Like the last one that I really remember coming on that was recent was Chowder. So that should that should tell you how long it's been.
Me, I'm more of a things got bad around 2016, but that's just my personal opinion. But basically what happened is that due to stuff like, say, Rick and Morty and the popularity of Cartoon Network shows, basically what happened is that Hollywood decided to take over and involve themselves more in it, which, knowing Hollywood, always leads to goodness.
Of course.
Man, my favorite anime is Sonic X, the 4Kids version.
Yeah, that
Okay, nigga.
that's a pretty good
My
show,
favorite-
I guess.
My favorite anime is the Boys and Girls Club dub of Dragon Ball Z. That exists. Look it up.
I'm not sure what mine is.
My favorite anime is Korean House.
Oh, my favorite anime is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Gecko versus the Say asked, any of you play Smash Brothers? I play Melee Netplay, yeah.
I played the Subspace Emissary like when I was fucking whatchamacallit.
11, 10.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I used to play Brawl regularly, but then I modded my Wii in like 2011, and I semi-bricked it so it can't get on the internet now.
Oh boy.
So,
You know,
I mean, the Wii is, I mean, even when it's modded, it's a pretty inferior console, so not gonna lie.
we need to Netplay Melee sometime, or Project M.
Yeah, definitely.
I do have, I'm not going to say it on stream, but we'll talk about it on the Discord. Oh yeah, did we tell the stream what we did Friday?
Oh
Should-
yeah,
Yes.
Hoplu, you gotta animate that.
Shit, I
Yeah,
do.
nice. We Hoplu, Filthy, myself, and Black Spruce called into the Tom Hartman show, and we actually started making a bunch of racist prank calls, and they got through. They got through. You could actually, swear to God, you could actually he unlisted the stream because of that. But no, we have a link to the stream, so I mean we're gonna clip that and we're gonna put it in like a compilation video.
Brilliant.
Like because I'm gonna animate it, if you wanna watch me animate it, just donate $1 to my patron.
Oh,
You can have access to the fucking animation stream.
shill.
Yeah, I'm a shell.
I'm a laser beam.
At least I'm not posting the link in the chat.
Yeah, Bush is gone. Crabs.
Yeah.
Dude, when Beto lost during the midterms, I just felt like pissing people off, so I just created the crab rave, and the text just says Beto lost. And I posted on Twitter.
Who's more thick, Kim Jong Un or Donald Trump. I
I
don't
would
think
s-
I don't think any of them are thick. I think that they're fucking acting to try and rile up their political base. Both of them.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
with
I think
Kim Jong Un, I mean, literally their entire society is centered around the state, so it would make sense that they do that in North Korea. But yeah, with Donald Trump, that's exactly what's going on. He deliberately makes the most politically inexpedient decisions that are just advised against. He goes out of his way. Like a good example would be in the case of the Pittsburgh shooting. His advisors were telling him, "Don't say anything about it, just ignore it." So what does he do? The motherfucker flies to Pittsburgh and goes to the synagogue where the shooting happened and says, yeah, this is a tragedy. It's really affecting it's really affecting the Republican votes."
Oh my god.
uh,
Yeah, I'm convinced that he's doing it on purpose. And it would make sense for him to be doing it on purpose once you realize that the Republicans and the Democrats have the same incentives to basically just pull people into the political system and convince people to be dependent on the state because in order, to be terrified of one side so that they're brought into supporting the other side, which best suits their interests.
Lord Harbinger asks, "Have you ever played Mass Effect? Spec Ops: The Line?"
No.
Neither one.
I know
No,
Azur's
I
played.
haven't.
Spec Ops. I actually did a presentation in my critical theory class on the game. It passed. It actually got a good grade.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say this: the original Mass Effect was the best in the series. I mean, I'll admit that the writing was better in 2. I actually haven't played 3, but I've seen clips on YouTube, so I know how it goes. But the gameplay in Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 was just the best. Arguably,
I agree, actually. Like, a lot of people like to say, Mass Effect 1 has better story, but Mass Effect 2 has better gameplay. The exact opposite is true. Like, oh my god, they just screwed up the combat so much. They made a mediocre system bad.
Logan Looker asks, if you could get rid of the FBI or CIA, who would it be? Both.
both.
Get rid of both.
They're both the same organization, so...
I still want to do some more ranting about Mass Effect and the changes they made in Mass Effect 2, though.
Anarchy Cat asks, "SO, thoughts on the Knights of the Old Republic games, if I've played them?" No, I haven't played them, but they look really fun.
The Mass Effect...
I have them. I haven't played them yet, but I've got them.
Mass Effect 1 is phenomenal. Mass Effect 2, once you've modded in all of the cut content, is arguably the best Star Wars story ever told. With several improvements to gameplay.
Josine asks, do you believe in ethics in video game journalism?
Dude, it's really funny that you mentioned that, actually, because one of my upcoming videos was going to be on the thought audit, and the skeptics are actually trying to advertise the thought audit as the new Gamergate.
Oh yeah.
Fucking cringe! Holy shit!
Captain Pipsqueak, yes, I played the KOTOR games. Of course I have.
I have them, but I haven't actually played them yet.
Oh, man, what's wrong with you people?
I
Play them.
I have like 100 games I haven't played yet, okay?
How has my day been? Ephraim Josine asks. I've been awake for 48 hours, so if I
Holy hell!
So if I sound tired, that's why.
Jesus.
Well, that's the thing. You always sound like this.
No, I can hear the difference. He definitely sounds a little bit drained.
What the fuck did you do? Did you put like an IV of G Fuel into your arm?
No, I was trying to finish up that fucking video, late stage statism, and I had to sit there, like, each page of the script took me like 2 hours to write because I couldn't think of anything. And then the more tired I got, the less I could think of what to write. But I wanted to put it out so fucking badly, I just wanted to get it over with.
Yeah, I've been there with my writing.
Man, I've had to go through several scripts because I kept coming up with new video ideas, and then like with the whole thing with the FTC investigating the video game industry, I had to scrap my Jim Sterling response just to just make a video to crush the loot box arguments. I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna stick with one thing and one thing only. Because if something else comes up, I'm gonna want to do something on that, and I know I'll never be able to finish the things before it. So get something done. That's it. Plus, I haven't uploaded anything meaningful in a while since the filthy commentary, which that was pretty cool.
Excuse me.
Thoughts on Shoehead? Crod asks in the chat.
Yeah.
You mean shoe on head? What the fuck are you talking about, Shoehead?
You know, Shoehead. You
I
don't know
don't-
Shoehead?
I don't like any of the skeptics.
Mm.
I don't know if I mentioned this on stream, but I was talking about this for like a good 15 minutes before we started streaming, that I think they're all controlled opposition. And my proof of this is the Candid app. They supported the Candid app and shilled for them blindly, even though, I mean, it was pretty easy to find. It even mentioned on the About section that it was owned by Facebook, which is subsidized by the government, and they were creating algorithms for Facebook so that Facebook and these other social media companies could more effectively censor content being posted. So they're shilling for these companies, then they're turning around and trying to claim that they don't like censorship and they don't like the government. By definition, that makes them controlled opposition. So no, I don't like the skeptics. I think they're all slimy as fuck, and Shoe on Head is one of the worst ones.
I think she's funny.
They're not skeptics.
What's interesting is how they liked, basically, whenever a lot of this kind of stuff kind of happens. Recently, they've almost unanimously been blaming the libertarians for the social media censorship.
Well, that's another reason that leads me to think that they're controlled opposition is that the arguments they make logically contradict one another and don't make any sense if you actually take them and compare them to one another. For instance, Dave Cullen, Computing Forever, will argue that taxation is theft, and will argue that we need decentralization, but then he'll turn around and argue for regulations, and he'll argue that government actions are legitimate and that the government has a legitimate claim over property. And the same thing goes for Sargon. He can't even accurately represent the libertarian argument, even though he's indirectly responded to me. I mean, he posted that case for social media like a day after I made my argument for the against the Internet Bill of Rights, and he responded essentially point by point, but he just misrepresented everything I said. He just didn't address me by name. He doesn't address us by name, and they go out of their way to misrepresent our arguments and fucking constantly trip all over themselves. And on top of that, they're on record being funded by corporatist entities. It really fucking looks suspicious when you take all of this together.
What's
Manny-
worse, a straw man
Manny
or an ineffectual straw man?
Kibilt says Sticks, Hexenhammer, and Logic are all right.
Logic, I think he just makes videos about atheism, so I don't really care about that. But Styx Hexenhammer is he's a fake libertarian. And the thing is, I don't think he's controlled opposition because, I mean, he wasn't funded by Candid. But yeah, he just says some of the dumbest fucking shit. He tried to argue that Facebook was too big to fail. So he actually said that, by the way. I'm not even making that up. argues for regulation. He'll even admit that these companies are being funded by the government, but from there he argues that government needs to come in and regulate them. He doesn't put that together and realize that he's being played like most of the other thinking people of the world have.
Played like a fiddle.
Yeah, so I think Styx Hexenhammer, I don't think that he's a shill. I just think that he's a fucking retard because he actually believes it.
Yeah, he actually buys into the crap.
So,
Here's the George Mason. Styx isn't even a minarchist at this point. Like not even like a Libertarian Party minarchist. Like he's too far fucking gone.
he's just a statist. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's a statist who's ashamed of it, so he calls himself a libertarian, but can't really explain how he's a libertarian.
He's a liberalist.
He's
That's
a lot
all.
like Gary Johnson. I think
Yeah.
a very libertarian proposal would be a tax on carbon emissions. That's Styx Hexenhammer.
What?
And of course, why?
Does not compute.
So.
I'm Gary Johnson. I want you to bake this damn cake.
Bake the Nazi cake, you freaking Jew.
So Tumblr. This is off topic, but Tumblr just decided to ban adult content on its platform.
R.I.P. Yeah, I'm
Well,
pretty sure that's the only reason anyone actually goes to Tumblr anymore. So I mean,
That's like 75%.
Anymore?
yeah,
From the
like-
beginning.
there goes a good 75 to 80% of their user base.
And that's like 75 to 80% of SJWs too. Since their
Yeah,
content, their blogs are going to be full of their mutilated genitalia.
No, guys, people don't understand how bad this actually is, because now they're gonna fucking flee. They're gonna the fucking Tumblrite refugees are gonna pillage the entire internet.
Well, I've got my guns and my umbrella. They can hit them with it. It's a heavy umbrella.
Well, first of all, they're probably already on a bunch of other websites, the actual
Yeah.
bloggers. But yeah, if they do migrate from Tumblr somewhere else, they'll probably go somewhere like DeviantArt. They won't come.
I mean, they're kind of already there.
I actually think they're headed for Twitter, personally.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Twitter already basically is Tumblr, so
yeah.
wouldn't surprise me.
George Mason asks, "What do you think of the Free State Project?"
It's all right. Sort of been co-opted by some more collectivist elements in recent years, but it could be worse, I'd argue.
I'm uninformed about that. Is it collectivist in the nationalist or socialist sense?
Nationalist and communist sense.
Oh, so both sides.
Globalism is also collectivism.
Efron Josine asks, will MySpace make a comeback?
No,
No.
they tried.
They tried.
Like,
Yeah, their layout is complete crap, and on top of that, they just have nothing going for them.
Don't
So,
some
no,
people still
MySpace
post?
will never come back.
Don't some people still post articles on there? And they get like 2
Yeah,
views or
I
something.
pointed that out that because
that's right.
Time owns MySpace for whatever reason, Time is choosing to keep MySpace up and running, and they're paying journalists to write articles that for only like 15 people to see at most. A lot of them don't have a single view.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Go look at the front page of MySpace right now. Look up myspace.com. You'll find a bunch of articles written by these fucking these ghost team journalists, and they don't have any views.
I remember you. Did you do a video on that, or was it?
Yeah, I mentioned it
Yeah.
in the video one time.
Yeah, that's where I knew it from, I think. I thought I heard it from you, but I wasn't sure because my memory's a complete mess.
Have you ever shot a gun without hearing protection on? If so, how did it sound? Yeah, I did. I shot a Beretta 9 in an Agora deal I was doing with my friend. He got me a Beretta 9 and I bought it for 0.73 Bitcoin. And I 0.073 Bitcoin. But anyway, yeah, to test it out, I fired a shot out the window while we were driving on the highway into a hill, and because the wind was also blowing, I didn't really hear much.
Azer asked, if you're drowning in a pool, would you rather A, suffocate and die, or B, suffocate and die?
I don't know who this Azer guy is, but
Sounds familiar.
yeah, weird.
I'll go with B because I like B's better than A's.
I'll go with B as well because B is the second letter in the alphabet, and everybody knows that a larger number is a superior number.
Exactly.
Secret option C.
What's my favorite gun in the media? An M16 with an M203 attachment under the barrel. In other words, the gun that was used, one of the guns that was used in the final scene of Scarface.
Oh, nice.
My favorite gun would be the AA-12.
It was the fully auto that Tony Montana used, and he fired a grenade out of it to blow up his door. That's what the M203 is. It's basically a little tube under the barrel that it functions as a grenade launcher.
Crowd asked, how do we save free speech in America? Get rid of the government.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, is there any other option?
I mean, do you think Freemason America are a threat? I think I have bigger things to worry about.
I'm giving... Are you talking about me, Ryan Young? I'm giving gun owners a bad name?
Yeah.
There's a masonry hole.
Tell me about how we need regulation to have gun rights and how the cops are our friends.
There's a Freemason hole or some shit like less than a kilometer away from my house.
I mean, the problem is like we don't know what their deal is.
No.
So it's hard to say if they are or are not a threat. I mean, they're subject to a lot of conspiracy theories, but you can't verify them one way or the other.
I think it's the voting station for the local area. It's where votes tend to happen.
Ron Paul if he ran for president? No, because I don't believe in state authority. Voting is coercive, so no.
I would personally, out of respect to the man.
Nah.
Yeah, but at the same time...
I mean, I'd defend him if he came under fire in the media. That's about as much as I'd do, and that's about as much as any self-respecting voluntarist should do in the political realm, is defend or refute ideas, but never try and coerce someone into anything.
Hey,
Voting is for suckers.
Excuse me, so remember when I said one stream that someone used to make a parody account, DemSock01, that's just anarcho-capitalist01? Yeah, someone just did that in the chat.
Huh. We knew they would. We had a feeling they would.
Neat.
What if he's actually legitimate?
I doubt it.
It's just a DemSock.
I mean, you gotta love when the left, quote unquote, tries to meme, quote unquote, because all they do essentially is take whatever you said about them and then like insert references to the person that is making fun of them and pretend that it makes sense. Anarcho-capitalist 01. Yeah, because the point is that it's funny because DemSock01, there's actually a person that exists named DemSock01, and it really fucking triggers him.
Wow, he must have had very interesting parents.
Mm-hmm. I think Democratic Socialist 01 is a lot more insightful, however.
Democratic Socialist 01 is a proud member of the Try Hard Legion.
he is a magnificent contributor to our fair civilization.
Yeah, what
So-
happened to?
My eyeballs.
Oh, that happened.
What happened to Jim Jesus in the comment section saying things like, "I can shove an entire fist up my ass"? Or
Oh.
what happened?
That was fucking Revan, and I don't know why he stopped doing that, but he did.
Oh, I know it's from Revan. I was just, I don't know, just being stupid. But
So,
I
George-
missed it.
George Mason says, "Not voting just shoots yourself in the foot. ESO is so wrong on voting." No, that's
How?
too.
No, voting is shooting yourself in the foot, because no matter what first of all you're doing, again, I've gone over this, that voting doesn't actually matter. I've proven this statistically. It doesn't matter. I've explained why it doesn't matter. Every party is working towards the exact same state interests. They're not going to do anything different. And the reason for this is because they're owned by the state. They're
Yeah.
owned by the state. They're going to work towards state interests. And we can see this based on the actual, representation in likelihoods of laws being passed versus how much actual support they have. It's virtually identical regardless.
One thing, though, I think that Spooner said that it's justifiable to vote to basically just reduce the damage.
That's fucking
But it wouldn't work.
That's basically the only argument that people who support voting have is
Yeah.
self-defense. But even then, if you vote, you're submitting to state authority. So
Yeah.
Plus,
Democracy is a complete farce.
I don't know. I kind of see it as sort of a do you use the roads even if you don't want them to fund it by stealing from you? Because I mean, I'm being stolen from anyways, so I may as well get some value out of it, even though I plan to stop being stolen from.
George, no, voting is simply legitimizing the system that you're in. That's currently
Yeah.
screwing you over.
voting is the suggestion box of slaves.
I know that. Like, I'm not saying that voting has any significant effects aside from creating a bunch of shitty voting ads that plague the internet and waste a bunch of time and money and digital paper and all that crap. I'm just saying that it's not really.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why the propaganda that's going around in the media is getting so absurd. Just responding to Captain Pipsqueak really quick. Voter turnout just keeps getting lower and lower, and that's a big problem for the state, because for one, it shatters the illusion that they're quote unquote representing people. But if they have a disillusioned population, then it creates more disillusioned people. So they want as many people involved in the political system as possible.
Yeah, and shit, what was I going to say?
Could voting being
It
legitimate
wasn't
if you
that
voted
democracy
yes
is a
for a
farce.
tax
It was
increase?
something
But
else.
anyway, we've been streaming for almost 2 hours now,
Yeah,
and I mean, this was a pretty fun stream.
it was.
We're gonna go ahead and end it here. Thank
Hold
you
up.
all for
I
tuning in.
might have. Hold
And,
up. Hold up. Wait. What if we ask questions and then we'll end it?
Hold on a second. XBL Spartan X170 asks,
Jesus
so
Christ.
what if the government...
He doesn't ask anything. We
So-
ask things. You start, Azer. You're alphabetical.
What?
Because he claims that I'm relying on the state for my income. No, man, I take zero welfare dollars.
Yeah.
Zero, none.
Yeah.
I do as much as I don't know about, people watching my channel or the people who are in this call with me, but no, I put my money where my mouth is. I do as much as I possibly can to trade it exclusively in crypto or to barter. I've gotten more benefit out of that anyway.
Good for you.
I actually have a
Excellent.
question for a Spartan. On the scale of 1 to stupid, how dumb are you?
Oh, geez, shots fired.
Jesus Christ! All right, what are your guys' questions?
What color are your eyes?
Brown.
Okay.
I'll go last because I have the best question.
I don't really have a question. I'm just going to say congratulations on reaching 2,000. I guess it's almost 24 or 2,400 now.
Yeah.
And it was nice to be able to. It was nice to have more subscribers than you for a time being, but still, yeah, good work getting at least some of your old subscribers back.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I had 3,000. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm humble for what I have, but yeah, I'm just sort of fucking building up what I once had because YouTube showed me because I was too fucking. Whoever's tapping, stop it. I can hear that, but anyway, yeah, I was speaking too many edgy truths about David Hogg, so I got showed.
Wait. Who's Daniel Hogg? You mean David? You mean Daniel Bohr?
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, congratulations on regaining your virginity.
It grew back.
Anyone else have questions?
I already asked mine earlier about the capitalist definition, so I mean,
Yeah.
if I can't really.
Yes, that just leaves me then. I have two questions. Number one, what do you think of Thomas Jefferson?
What do I think of Thomas Jefferson?
Yeah, in the context of his time period. Like, obviously, you can't expect him to be an ANCAP.
Yeah, well, I mean, anarchy was. I mean, if you think that it's not mainstream now, back then, that people like Spooner didn't even exist yet. So
Exactly.
I mean, I get it. It's sort of like Spooner in the sense that he's a pre-marginalist, so you can't necessarily expect him to accept the concept of marginalism. He was just working with what was known at the time. So
Yeah.
I sort of look at classical liberals like that. That they were simply working with what they knew at the time and what they could best formulate.
Exactly.
And yeah, I know that that's not really an excuse, that they could have taken their logic to its natural conclusion, but you got to think about it from their perspective, that at the time that was just completely unheard of, the idea of not having a state.
Yeah, like there are plenty of problems with Aristotle, but that doesn't mean you should just entirely reject him.
Escape
But-
69. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Anyways, my second and final question is, when did you find out you were into Vor?
Yeah, hold on. I'm blocking that guy who left that comment, but anyway, when did I find out I was into Vor? I'd say around like 2008.
Ironically, I think I found out in 2010.
Spartan, no, you did not. What the hell are you talking
Nobody thinks that you did. You
No.
think that you wrecked Filthy in the debate that you had with him. Yeah, it was terribly organized, but yeah, nobody.
There's the
nobody-
problem with fucking chat rooms. They always take away from the value of the stream.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Like back when
think.
I had you guys remember when I had when the Everfree King came on my stream, like the fashy guy.
I don't
Who?
remember.
I might not have been around then.
No, you weren't on. But
Yeah.
anyways, don't talk to XBL Spartan. He's
Alright.
a console peasant.
Don't mention the war.
Conservative minarchism for the win. No.
Bitch, you aren't even a minarchist, let alone a conservative. You're a neocon motherfucker. You're a Trotskyist, neoconservative motherfucker.
Ow.
The fucking Rageaholic video, the stupid like music in the background when he got angry, that like Sonic Adventure bullshit music.
Anyways,
Yeah, I think that's enough for now.
yeah, that's about enough.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See you all later.
Bye.
Bye, guys.